When Bodie died, it did not run out of gold. It ran out of patience. By the early 1900s, the once roaring boomtown in the high desert of California had already begun to empty. Mines slowed. Investors pulled back. Families packed what they could carry. But beneath the streets, beneath the wooden sidewalks, beneath the abandoned saloons and hotels, the ore veins did not vanish. They remained. According to historical mining reports, several of Bodie's deeper veins were never fully exhausted. Operations became too expensive. Water intrusion increased. Transport costs rose. At some point, the calculation changed. The gold was still there, but it was no longer worth chasing. Before we continue, if you're interested in real stories about gold towns, abandoned mines, and the fortunes that were left behind when timing failed, this channel focuses on documented history, not legends. Because sometimes the greatest treasure is the one no one returns for. In the 1878, Bodie exploded. A major discovery at the Standard Company mine triggered one of California's last great gold rushes. Within months, thousands arrived. Miners, investors, speculators, merchants. By 1880, Bodie's population surged to nearly 8,000. The town had banks, newspapers, hotels, dance halls, and more than 60 saloons. Ore production was massive. Contemporary reports described shipments worth millions of dollars leaving the district. Stamp mills ran day and night. But even at its peak, Bodie was not simple placer gold. Much of its wealth came from complex ore. Gold locked inside quartz veins, often mixed with silver. Extraction required infrastructure, and infrastructure required capital. Bodie's success was engineered, which meant its survival depended on cost. At the surface, Bodie looked exhausted by the 1890s. Production numbers declined. New discoveries slowed. Investors shifted attention elsewhere. But underground, the story was more complicated. The Standard Mine, Bodie's largest producer, had developed an extensive network of shafts and drifts reaching deep into the hillside. Ore bodies were not uniform pockets that simply disappeared. They were veins, and veins continue. Mining records from the late 19th century indicate that certain ore chutes extended below the levels then being worked. Exploration at greater depth required heavier timbering, improved ventilation, and more powerful pumping systems. Water intrusion increased with depth. Rock temperatures rose. Transport distances lengthened. The gold did not end. The effort multiplied. At some point, the deeper levels transitioned from profitable to marginal, not because they were empty, but because extraction became uncertain. And uncertainty discourages capital. The richest surface zones had already been mined. What remained was harder, deeper, and more expensive. Gold mining is not just about finding ore. It is about margins. In Bodie's early years, high-grade ore justified aggressive development. Stamp mills crushed quartz efficiently. Transportation routes to markets were established. But several factors shifted the equation. First, declining ore grade. Even if gold remained in the veins, average yield per ton often decreased over time. Second, infrastructure aging. Timber supports underground required replacement. Machinery demanded maintenance. Fuel and labour costs fluctuated. Third, market conditions. Gold prices were fixed under the gold standard, meaning revenue per ounce did not increase to compensate for rising costs. Fourth, competition. Other mining districts drew investment capital away. By the early 1900s, operating at greater depth in Bodie required new capital infusion, capital that investors were increasingly unwilling to provide. It was not that Bodie had no gold left. It was that Bodie no longer guaranteed return. And in mining, hesitation can end a district long before geology does. Bodie did not die in a single event. It faded through damage. In 1892, a major fire destroyed a large portion of the business district. Wooden structures, built quickly during boom years, burned easily in the dry mountain air. The town rebuilt, but each reconstruction required investment. Each setback reduced confidence. Meanwhile, underground conditions worsened. Water intrusion increased in several shafts. Pumping operations required continuous fuel and maintenance. When pumps failed, even briefly, lower levels flooded. Flooded shafts do not simply resume operation. They demand time, labour, and capital to reopen. By the early 20th century, Bodie's population shrank steadily. Families left first. Merchants followed. Mining companies consolidated operations or closed entirely. Infrastructure that once symbolized permanence became liability. Rails rusted. Timbers weakened. Equipment deteriorated. The town that had once roared with stamp mills now echoed, not because the gold was gone, but because the system sustaining its extraction had eroded. Even in decline, Bodie did not immediately cease production. Smaller operations continued intermittently. Historical records indicate that gold was still being extracted into the early 20th century, though in reduced volumes. The standard mine operated in cycles, shutting down, reopening under new ownership, attempting modernisation. Each reopening was an act of optimism, each closure a concession to arithmetic. By the 1910s and 1920s, output was sporadic. Infrastructure built for peak capacity no longer made economic sense at diminished scale. Investors were cautious. Technology was improving elsewhere. New districts offered fresh promise. The final substantial shipments from Bodie marked not geological exhaustion, but financial surrender. After that, activity became minimal. The ore veins remained. The shafts remained. But sustained investment did not. And mining without capital is geology without opportunity. Even as Bodie emptied, technical assessments did not declare the district barren. Engineering reports from the late operational years suggested that portions of the ore system had not been fully delineated. Exploration had followed known veins, but deeper and lateral extensions remained only partially tested. Mining in the 19th century relied on available technology and capital constraints. Geological understanding was practical rather than comprehensive. Drilling programs were limited. Mapping was manual. Assays were selective. When companies evaluated remaining ore, they focused on proven blocks, not hypothetical extensions. That distinction matters. Proven reserves justify investment. Speculative potential does not. Some engineers believed that additional ore bodies likely existed below previously mined levels. Others argued that remaining material would be lower grade and inconsistent. Without sustained funding, the question remained unresolved. No definitive declaration closed the geological file. Operations simply ceased, and when mining stops, geological uncertainty becomes permanent. In the decades that followed, Bodie did not attract major revival. There were small attempts, limited reworking of tailings, minor exploration programs, but no sustained, large-scale redevelopment. Several factors contributed. First, accessibility. Bodie sits at high elevation in a remote region. Infrastructure that once supported heavy industry deteriorated or was removed. Second, regulatory and ownership complexities. As land control shifted and the town eventually became a protected state historic park, large-scale industrial activity became impractical. Third, economics. Modern mining requires significant upfront capital. Investors prioritized districts with clearly defined, high-grade, large-scale reserves. Bodie's remaining potential was uncertain, not proven, and capital prefers certainty. The final barrier was time. Once a district loses momentum, expertise disperses, equipment relocates, records scatter. Revival becomes reconstruction, and reconstruction costs more than continuation. So Bodie remained, not exhausted, not rediscovered, but suspended. No precise number defines what remains beneath Bodie. Mining districts of the 19th century rarely closed with a final geological declaration stating, fully exhausted. Instead, they closed when profitability declined. Historical production records estimate that Bodie yielded tens of millions of dollars in gold and silver during its peak years, a significant sum for the era. But production figures reflect what was extracted, not what was left. In quartz mining, ore bodies are rarely uniform. High-grade chutes alternate with lower-grade zones. Some veins pinch out, others widen. In Bodie's case, certain shafts extended to depths that were considered ambitious for their time. Yet compared to modern mining depths, they were modest. Technological advances in drilling, geophysical imaging, and underground engineering now allow exploration far beyond 19th century limits. Does that mean Bodie contains large, untapped fortune? There is no documented evidence of vast, untouched bonanzas waiting near the surface. But there is also no comprehensive modern exploration program conclusively proving complete depletion. The realistic answer lies between myth and dismissal. There may be remaining ore. The question is not whether gold exists underground. The question is whether its concentration and volume justify reopening a district now preserved as history. There is an important distinction between a mine that is exhausted and one that is abandoned. Exhaustion implies geological depletion. Abandonment implies economic decision. Bodie falls into the second category. The district declined because capital withdrew. Infrastructure deteriorated. Costs exceeded predictable returns. That does not mean every vein was mined to its final ounce. It means the system that extracted value collapsed before the geology did. This distinction changes the way ghost towns are understood. They are not always empty. They are often unfinished. Beneath the preserved facades of Bodie's wooden buildings lies an underground network of tunnels, shafts, and stopes, silent, but still structurally present. Time did not remove the gold. It removed the incentive. And when incentive disappears, so does industry. Today, Bodie stands preserved. Wooden buildings lean under high desert winds. Dust moves across empty streets. Windows frame silence where stamp mills once thundered. Below that silence lies a network of tunnels, engineered more than a century ago. They do not glitter. They do not advertise treasure. But they exist. If gold remains underground, why does no one return? The answer is not mystery. It is structure. Bodie is now a protected historic park. Industrial redevelopment would conflict with preservation lore. Environmental regulations add further barriers. Even if legal obstacles were removed, economics would remain decisive. Modern mining requires confirmed, scalable reserves. Exploration programs cost millions before extraction begins. Investors demand predictable yield. Bodie offers history. It does not offer certainty. And uncertainty is expensive. There's also another factor rarely acknowledged. The town itself has become more valuable as memory than as mine. Tourism preserves it. Conservation defines it. Its identity now rests in abandonment. Reopening it would erase the very condition that makes it significant. So the gold beneath Bodie remains in a different category. Not hidden treasure. Not myth, but dormant geology. It is not chased because chasing it would destroy what time preserved. And that leads to the final thought. Some gold is lost because it was stolen. Some because it sank. Some because it was buried and forgotten. But in places like Bodie, gold remains underground not because it disappeared, but because the world moved on.